So now that we have done adding in RoboPro, what I'd like you to look at now is then how can we calculate a percentage, all right? So we know if we want to calculate the percentage of blue parts, okay, we can do that, all right? So that would be the number of blue parts divided by the total, right? So as we look at that, let's look at what calculating a percentage looks like. All right, so the operation there is going to be division, right? And we also are going to need to multiply. So we need to take the number of blue and divide it by the total. So let's just drag in the variables here to do that. So we want to name this one blue, and we want to name this one total. Alright, and then we want to take that output in, let's see, I'll just put them over here. Okay, and so blue divided by total, okay, and I want to take that number and I need to multiply it by 100. I don't really need that one to have a name. I'm just going to leave it variable, but I'm going to set its initial value to 100. Alright, so now I want you to see what happens when I try to execute this operation. I need to name the output there. I'm going to call that percent. Alright, so watch what happens now when I run the program. Alright, so it's starting to go through, and it's running, and everything seems to be working fine, but I'm not getting a number here. Well, what's happened is we have everything looks good up until here, but nothing's happening there. So this has to do with how RoboPro treats numbers, all right? So let's go ahead and show you. RoboPro has different kinds of numbers. One is called a floating point and one is called an integer. And these variables by default are integers. When I open them, see, they are integers, all right? And they're linked and they've been integers because when I'm counting in integers, and so that's the way that should be. Alright, but I need to change these to floating point to do these operations. So I go to operators, I come down here, and then I have a couple of choices. They're integers now, and I need to change them to floating points, okay? So I'm just going to slide some things around a little bit so I can get to everything. Let's drag all these over a little bit. Oops. I hit escape there. Alright. Get those dragged over. Alright, so once I do that, I can connect all these things up, and now I've changed those from integers to floating point. Now my operations are all denoted as integer or floating point too, so I need to change them. Alright, so I want to change this to floating point and say okay. I need to change this to floating point and say okay. Right, and you'll notice the boxes are thicker. So I want you to see what happens when I run this. And I know this is not going to run correctly, so just watch what happens. Alright, this error message, no attached input can handle message equal. In level 4 and above, subprogram inputs have an option to accept only equal commands or any command. That doesn't really make any sense based on where I am. But you can see right here that we have that red arrow. It's trying to tell me where there's a problem. The red arrow is kind of helpful. So it's saying somewhere right here there's a malfunction, and it's because these are floating points. This has to be a floating point, and this has to be a floating point. Now you should be able to see that the boxes on these are thicker because they're floating points. And now if we run it, we should be able to see the percentage there. Alright, now blue, there was no percentage of blue there, so okay, and now we're beginning to get a percentage, and I want it to be something other than 50%, so I'm manipulating those numbers. Alright, and I'm getting a decimal, so that all looks good. You can see what's happening there, and I am actually calculating the percentage.